Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast where I ask the people who create comedy what it means to them. The great actor Donald Wolfett once famously said, "Dying is easy, comedy is hard." But the great actor Peter Ustinov once said, "Comedy is just a funny way of being serious." So each episode, in a very roundabout way, I ask my guest, are you a Wolfett or a Ustinov? You can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. I love talking to the people in comedy about comedy. If you'd like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is a comedian who's done stand-up, pantomime, and Britain's Got Talent, but is probably most well known for being someone else. As Liv Struss, she has garnered millions of views on social media and TV spots parodying the unparodyable, if that even is a word. It's comedian Nerine Skinner. What part did comedy play early on, sort of growing up? Was there a big comedic influence on your life?
My brother was my comedic influence, actually. There's a big age gap between us. So there's probably about 16-year gap between myself and the next brother up. And then the other one's 20-year gap. So my dad actually died when I was about 3-ish. And I think I spent a lot of time with my brother because my mum would be at work and doing all sorts of pieces. And my brother loved Alan Partridge and like dry comedy, sarcastic comedy. And he basically forced me to watch all of the things that he would watch. So I grew up watching, like Steve Coogan, Far Show, Big Train, just anything that was kind of that ilk, really. Shooting Stars. And I think I developed a sort of, I suppose, I basically was probably just trying to copy my brother because I thought he was ultra cool. And he is, I will admit, he is really cool. So anything he says absolutely goes. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing, really, because if my brother hadn't have introduced me to that, I don't know what I would have watched, really, or if any. So I think I probably do owe it to him, because then I used to try and make him laugh, and I knew that the things that made him laugh were those programs, and so I started developing a sense of humor off the back of them, which is probably manufactured to try and look cool. But anything. Especially I love Simon Pegg as well. But I think it's changed as time has moved on. I obviously still really love and appreciate those guys, but I'm also really interested in like Lucille Ball. I watch more and more of her stuff, which is sort of like the older things, variety. I'm really interested by, and also Kristen Wiig. I think she's incredible. Tina Fey, and I just the silly humor, really silly, dry, anything goes. I'm all over that.
Yeah. It's interesting you say as you get older, you sort of look further backward.
Yeah.
Was there something? Where did that come from, do you think?
I think it's actually something to do with looking for things that are different, because I think there's so much. It is very easy, I think, to jump on that treadmill of what's current and what's going on at the moment and following that. And actually, I always think, not only how do you stand out as a person, but I'm interested by what comedy used to be like, and kind of where it all began. And I find that fancy, like even like Groucho Marx and things. I find watching that, maybe it comes from having been in a musical theatre background as well, and I've done a lot of pantomimes, and that slapstick comedy is a real big part of me, and I didn't even mean it to be. And then doing the comedy cabaret trio, the Dots, that I was part of, that was influenced quite heavily by that slapstick or farcical humour, or like Morecambe and Wise. So I think maybe just as time has gone on, I've started to pick that back up again and delved further and further back in time to see, I don't know, maybe what you can bring back now that we don't see as much of, because it especially things like Lucille Ball and that kind of slapstick style. I think everyone needs some silliness, and I think it's just another area of comedy that perhaps has been missed a little bit, that it's nice to kind of bring it back.
Yeah.
And bring it back the old.
Yeah. So you trained in musical theatre. Where did that come from, and how did that move on to then doing comedy?
Well, I started actually with dance when I was little.
Hmm.
I started about age 3-ish doing dance classes, and I loved ballet. And it was funny actually because I used to be really scared of my ballet teacher, and I used to cry, and I wouldn't go in, and I was so scared of her. And my mum eventually just stopped taking me because I was just adamant that I wouldn't go anymore. And it was only later, like when looking back at dance videos and seeing me running around the room doing everything absolutely perfectly, but being shouted at. And it was probably because she was pushing me to, she knew I could go somewhere, but obviously don't understand that at that age. So I think, gosh, if I'd have carried that on, I might have been a prima ballerina or something. But I think I always loved that performative element when I was little, but I didn't really understand what it was or what it meant. And then I kept doing amateur dramatics and things when I was growing up. I remember playing the lion in The Wiz, and that was to this day my favourite role I've ever played. And I'll never get to play again. But I think that was it. I had a friend at secondary school. I was doing secondary school, everything normal, and he said to me that he'd managed to get into the Brit School in Croydon, and it must have been just before we went into year 10. And I just said, I'm jealous, I want to go. And then put in my application to go there. And funnily enough, didn't get onto the musical theatre course, but managed to get onto the dance course and did 4 years there. And it was kind of only by chance. I think I've always loved performing, but didn't realise how seriously. And then I went there, and it opened up my world to the possibilities. And it was sort of like a game of luck all the time, because I then auditioned for musical theatre college afterwards,
right?
Thinking I wouldn't get in, and I managed to just scrape my way in. But then came obviously the financial side of how you afford that, which was just a nightmare. But I was sort of just always adamant that I didn't know what it was I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to perform. So just any opportunity that came up, I went for it. But I don't think I ever really fitted into the musical theatre world as such, because I always took things too far, or just was always joking or finding some ridiculous situation in it. But I still love that world. You know, if a job came up, it would be lovely to do a musical. But it's strange. I sort of fell into it, really, I suppose.
What was that first time out then as a comic? What was the first performance that you did?
So I went to a college doing a musical theatre called Arts Educational Schools, which is in Chiswick, and just around the corner there's the Tabard Theatre, where they obviously, you probably know it well. And it said, "Oh, do you think you're funny? Do 5 minutes." And I thought, I'll give that a go. And I think I was in my 3rd year, did it, and it went really well. And then I started doing some other gigs, and it was I regret, when you look back and you go, oh, if I could just change one thing, it would be to have not stopped when I stopped, because you never know what could have happened, and also just the experience that you gain. But because I was just coming fresh out of musical theatre, I just got an agent, I didn't know what, I was like, I need to get headshots, I need to focus on this thing that I've just done a degree in, and if I go down this route, that's a whole different thing. It's like starting a whole new thing when I've just finished this massive thing. So I kind of went off and did other things, and did cruise ships and musical theatre stuff. And then only came back into the comedy side of it probably in 2015-ish, when we formed our comedy duo, Franks and Skinner. And that's when we actually met on a pantomime, playing 2 types of bread roll, baguettes and croissants, those important integral rolls, bread rolls, in Beauty and the Beast. So I had a big gap before it kind of then went back into it, but I just kept being pulled all the time, even in my musical theatre work, I suppose. I'd always end up playing the silly character, or I don't know, trying to make something more of my role. And then so I kind of just landed back into the comedy stuff, and that started to spiral probably since 2015. It's only been in the last couple of years I started to really focus on my own work. So it's been a real kind of mixture of worlds, which is great, but very confusing.
Yeah. So getting into comedy and doing comedy now as you are, with that background in dance and theatre, is it so very different? Is it what you anticipated it would be? What was it that surprised you about doing comedy?
I think it is. It's different and similar at the same time. It's different in the sense of it's a whole new set of people and a new set of rules, and I suppose at the same time you are trying to actively find work and make connections and all of those things which are the same. But I think with comedy there's no sort of set way of doing anything. It's your way and your interpretation of something, whereas with musical theatre or with the acting, it's you're being directed, or there are like more boundaries with it. So there's so much more freedom with comedy, which is great, but then it's just like, I don't know what I'm going out into. There's no structure, is there? I suppose, but then I suppose you could argue that there isn't on the other side of it as well. But I found it particularly with comedy. It's about what's really good is that the two worlds merge when it comes to confidence and performing. So, for instance, just having done so many pantomimes, for example, or whatever job it is, and you're performing in front of hundreds or maybe thousands of people, and if you get that opportunity to do improvisation or whatever that is, that actually those skills come in so well when it comes to crowd work and the comedy side of things, that it almost feels like you've done more stage time because of that than perhaps you would have done if you'd have only just started with comedy. So all of those skills have been useful. But I need to learn. I remember with Franks and Skinner, we were trying to, because we both came from a musical theatre background, we were both trying to wedge like a bit of singing in. Oh, let's put a dance in here. And we're like, there's no reason for this dance. We don't need to be cheerleading at this point. Why have we decided? We're just like, well, we've got to get dancing. So it's knowing its place and whether it actually is going to help enhance it or not when you get excited because you think you can put them all in there.
So your partnership with Lizzie, so you did a couple of shows at Edinburgh, didn't you, 2015 to 17? So how was that going up to the biggest arts festival in the world and going out and trying your partnership in this overwhelming series of shows and sort of vying for your tiny corner of the festival? How was that as an experience?
Really, really scary and really, really stressful. I think, and if you spoke to Lizzie as well, if we look back at that time, we'd probably say it was a nightmare, and actually it ultimately made us as close as we are now. But at the time, I think we drove each other up the wall because one, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, Lizzie had more experience than I did at the time. She'd done a few bits and pieces in Edinburgh and producing bits and pieces. I knew no idea. So there was that element of it. Then you've got to find your dynamic, which we'd only met, I think, the previous year in the December, and had decided that we were doing this. And we didn't know what we worked together like. And so we were just trying to put all of these ideas together. We didn't have a director. We were doing it all by ourselves. Then you get up there and we're sharing a room because we can't afford to have two. I didn't realise I snored. So she had to buy me some snore strips and try and be very kind about it. And then but you very quickly find like what your strengths and weaknesses are together, and we went through the most ridiculous experiences and that are funny and tragic and all of the things at the same time. And actually at the end of it, after the dust has settled, I suppose it's with every comedian is the same, you go, oh, that was brilliant, should we do it again? Why?
Yeah.
And we did it all again in 2017. But I love her to pieces, and we're like best mates now, and it's I think I think it's a lesson. It's ideal to try and know each other a little bit before you go and do something as mad as like the biggest festival in the world.
So then a couple of years later, you go back with the Dots in 2019, properly ramping up the slapstick element then. So how did the Dots then come together, and what was that experience like? Because you've gone from a duo to a trio.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I had made a decision that year that I was going to take my own show up to Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I'm doing this now, I'm doing it. And then I met one of the Dots on a pantomime. And again, oh no, you didn't. And she really wanted to take her. She had a vocal harmony trio, very nice, for functions, weddings, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And she'd been putting a few comical elements and bits in it and doing some more cabaret kind of style stuff, and wanted to expand on that. So I initially came on board as like another eye to see what could help. But for one thing led to another, and one of the girls had to drop out. So I ended up jumping in to be the third person. And I just said, oh, why don't we base this on truth? The situation is that you're always having to get people in a last minute to cover people, and it's a nightmare. What if we take it one step further and this person who comes in doesn't know what they're doing but pretends that they do, and they're just a really keen amateur. So I jumped in, and we did this like cruise ship. It was like a tryout to get agents and stuff for comedy gigs on cruises, and that went well. And then I just said, oh, there's an option for us to go to Edinburgh, because it's another job, another show. I do 40 Towers dining show, which quite often goes up to Edinburgh, and they had some spaces. So I stopped doing my show, and we decided we were going to do this thing. Yeah. But it was the most ridiculous venue for what we were doing. But actually, that made the chaotic side of it even better, because the ceilings were too low. So all of our choreography, we just kept hitting our. So in our heads, we made it part of the story that we thought we were in this like the Royal Albert Hall, but we got the dates wrong. So actually, we had one light, I think, that worked. So we had all these lighting stakes that didn't happen, but actually, again, it just added to everything going wrong. And that went really well. And then the next thing we were on Britain's Got Talent, and that was crazy. And so it was another one of those experiences where like a whirlwind, really. But it's just mad because the other two then did important things, like Lizzie did, and had babies and life stuff. So they went and did that, and I was like, oh, okay, now's the time. Then I have to hone in on what it is that I'm doing.
You mentioned Britain's Got Talent, so semi-finalist in 2022.
Yeah.
And I particularly enjoyed Simon Cowell's expression, as I always do when he knows he's made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
It's a great show. And like I said, it's really ramping up the slapstick. I mean, you must have been in your element with that idea, surely.
Yeah, it was. What was really lovely about it was that we knew exactly which song we wanted to do as our first round. And we kind of knew what the beginning, middle and end of that was, because it was just taking it from our show, really. But in hindsight, we should have probably thought about the fact that where does this go, the semi-final and the final. But I don't think you necessarily audition for that thinking that you're going to get through. So it was like, let's throw it at it, and then they were coming back to us and being like, oh yeah, is there something more you could do at this point or whatever, and they obviously have more ability to have sound effects or like other things that we could throw in. So I think we threw the kitchen sink at the first round, and then. But I mean, amazing. Like, I look back and I go, oh God, I don't think any of us thought that we would necessarily get through. We'd just go and do our best. But the reaction, like you say, from Simon Cowell and from the genuine, I thought they're going to believe, they're not going to fall for it. But I think the fact that they did was like such a shock to us that it almost took us a step back a bit, which actually helped with the characters because they weren't over the top as such. But yeah, it was that first round was an amazing experience. But then the semi-finals, what we, like I say, we should have probably planned what we would sing. And the idea that we had, we couldn't get the rights to it, I think. So that meant we needed to change it. And we'd already blown quite a few of our jokes. Say if you were watching an hour-long show, they'd have come during that time, but a lot of them came in the one song. And then obviously there's a rehearsal time that's tricky as well, because I was actually in Australia doing a children's show for 3 months. And we found out that we got through to the semi-finals while I was out there, and they couldn't physically rehearse or do anything because I was on the other side of the world. So when we came back, we only had a month. But what we also didn't realise is that when you're planning your semi-final, you also have to be planning your final in case you get through to that too, and rehearsing it. So it was just absolute overwhelm and stress. And I think the mixture of all three of us getting more and more stressed, getting anxious, then Britain's Got Talent, coming back to us, giving us suggestions or ideas, and not maybe seeing, maybe we didn't see it how they were seeing it, or whichever way it was around. We ended up I think we put too many things, and when you know that something's not going to work, and we got up on stage, and there it was. I think we lasted like 20 seconds before the before the buzzer went in the semi-finals. So you don't need to watch that one, but just watch the first round. But what was really good, I was lucky that my character kind of was oblivious to the whole thing, so I could just play like, oh, is the buzzer a good thing? Like, I was lucky. But yeah, I did want to go into hiding after that for a little while.
You said about being nervous and stressed by the whole thing. I mean, do you get nervous about performing?
Yeah, definitely. Weirdly, I have to remind myself, because Britain's Got Talent was that is the biggest thing I've done in terms of being on live TV, especially that semi-final, just being like, I'm about to go and do this thing, and I've got an earpiece in my ear, and I've tracks, and I don't know how this is going to go, and but strangely, I get just as nervous doing like even just a stand-up gig or something for a 5-minute thing, and I have to say to myself, you did Britain's Got Talent, like how is this anywhere near that? But it's strange what your mind does to you, and you're like, I think it's that worry that like you just want in anything when it comes to comedy, you've got no idea how it's going to land or what the crowd are gonna be like, and even if I think back to doing like pantomimes, for example, we call there's a weird thing, like an energetic thing that you just can't explain. Like if there's one person in the audience who just happens to maybe not be in the right headspace or whatever, how much that affects everyone in the room. And then also, therefore, like before, if you've got a funny energy that you've brought to it, it's not just the audience, it's you, like whatever you're giving off. I think you just never know what you're going to be like or what the audience are going to be like at any given moment. So it's just, I guess that level of nerves, I suppose, would be weird if it wasn't there, I imagine, because it's such a subjective thing, isn't it? You just don't know. But it is wild that I have the same level of stress over a live television program and the pub down the road.
Yeah. So between taking the Dots to Edinburgh 2019 and taking them to the BGT stage in 2022, something went on which kind of shut comedy down a little bit. I mean, how do you deal with the situation where you don't have an outlet for your creativity as you would understand it? What did you do, and how did you come back?
Yeah, do you know what? I think actually for me, it was the first. The pandemic was obviously awful for everyone, and it was terrible for the fact that I lost, as we all did, work and everything. I couldn't even get a job in Tesco's. Like, they rejected me because they said I wasn't strong enough to carry the bags.
A bit rude.
I mean, what? It's true, but it was. I tried every job under the sun to get, and I couldn't get any. But I think in a good way, the positive of it was that it really forced me to start doing my own stuff, because I hadn't really been doing my own comedy. I'd been, up until that point, really, I'd been doing the stuff with Lizzie, and that had stopped, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then we had formed the Dots, and although that was still sort of like happening, it wasn't there wasn't really anything going on because it couldn't, because of the they were busy doing life things and that kind of thing. It was harder to all like get together at once. So I started making my own sketches and characters. I think the very first one I did was my therapist character, the Ivona Helfu lady, who was basically helping everyone with their lockdown issues. And I thought, do you know what, maybe this is my time to start putting my own content out there and not really worrying about whether it does well or it doesn't do well. So actually, I think it aligned me a little bit. I was very poor and didn't know what I was doing, but weren't we all? But I think actually it focused me to kind of go, okay, I've got to really do this, and it's probably been since then that I've actually been taking it more seriously as a solo venture. So yeah, positives and negatives to it, but it definitely pushed me for sure. Pushed me over the edge.
So you talked there a little bit about developing your characters. Would you call yourself a character comic?
I don't know what I am, actually. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know what I'm doing. And I am sort of enjoying the ride of working that out, because I'd probably say my leanings are more character comedy, because that's where I've started and that's where I sort of am at the moment with the creations that I'm making.
Yes.
But I do equally enjoy stand up and crowd work and talking to people and trying to, and just finding out what I am as just Nerine, rather than putting these big characters on, because they can be absolutely ridiculous, and I like the kind of like mixture of the two. I don't know whether there is one particular that I like more than the other, but I'm enjoying doing a bit of both.
Yeah,
for sure. I don't know if that's a thing. Do people do that?
Do what you like. It's interesting because, you've gone from being a bread roll to being the motivator, the vampire, the witch, Britain's worst prime minister. And throughout all of these characters, I just wonder where was Nerine hiding?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I am really intent on trying to do a bit more of stand up and just be me, because I think it is so wild and wacky and all the rest of it. And it's not necessarily, I don't think I am hiding behind any of them as such, but I think I've got so stuck down these little holes of different characters that are so extreme that I quite like the idea of just going, hey, let's just be normal for a moment and talk about and relate to people on a different level, and tell stories. And I do really enjoy those moments where you can just talk to a crowd as yourself and just see where that takes you, which you can absolutely do as a character as well. But I find that really, there's something really pure about that, because you're connecting as yourself with the other person on a just very natural level, like you would down the pub. I find that just as joyful, I think. Yeah.
Does being a character, or when you're playing a character, does that allow you to just be more than, if you know what I mean? Some stand-ups say that they are of an exaggerated version of themselves when they're performing. But if you're playing effectively somebody else, you can be even more over the top and outlandish with that character. Is that sort of thing, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and there's certain characters that you can do that with more than others. And it's interesting now doing like my full show, going, oh, it's interesting which characters I feel more relaxed in improvising with, because perhaps if they are, like you say, more ridiculous, you can get away with so much more.
Yeah.
Than if they were perhaps a timid character, or slightly more placid, that it actually that can be quite hard, which is weird, because you're playing a character, so if that's how they operate, then it doesn't really matter, does it? But it's interesting that there definitely are characters that I feel more comfortable portraying or being, or if I feel like I really know them very well. So that's why I kind of sort of force myself, I think, to just go, oh, let's just be Nerine for a bit, and also drop any form of other character that's on top of that. Like just try and be me, because I don't know. I don't think. Again, maybe it's that thing where I'm going, I'm just trying to go back to the old thing, or trying to do something a little bit different, because I like the variety of mixing it all up a little bit, and which is a blessing and a curse again, because it means I'm really not necessarily conventional when it comes to doing stand-up nights, because people are like, what are you? Are you a stand-up? Are you a character? What am I going to get? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, without want to sound like a psychotherapist, is it easier for you perhaps to let Nerine out in little bits and pieces, and the rest of the time you're protected by the masks you wear of these other characters?
Yeah, potentially. I do feel like we're in a therapy session. It's quite nice, actually. It's quite nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll cry in a minute now.
When did you first start feeling like you were in a therapy session?
Yeah. Do you know what? Potentially, I think that probably does play a part in it. I think there's also an element. There's two things. I think one, because I've started to. I've got a bit of a following for the things that I've done when it comes to character stuff, particularly like we were talking about with Liz Truss and things, which is brilliant. But also that is tricky as well, because if people then come to watch me, they may expect to see a certain amount of that thing. So I think I have been trying to find what my place is and where I fit in terms of how much of that thing I'm giving. So there's probably an element of that people pleasing sense of it, but at the same time, I think the thing that overrides all of it is actually a want to do all of the things. Like I was saying before about with musical theatre, and want to put a bit of song in, want to do a bit of that in. I really like the idea of having a bit of everything in a show, and actually. I think there is a world where maybe I do a show in a couple of years which is just purely stand-up, because that I think it's to do with having too much content and I can't, and that's a good thing. I've got so many stories about my mum. I've got so many stories that haven't made it into my show, or characters that haven't made it into my show. And being an indecisive person, it's a nightmare, because I can't work out or decide what best serves it. So I suppose it is a blessing, but I probably need like 3 hours and then it would have longer of each thing. So I think it's more to do with that and absolute overwhelm than which is better, like as I say, than having no material at all. But it's trying to work out what best serves the thing is probably where I'm at the moment, which is tricky.
Here's a sentence I never thought I'd get to. Let's talk about Liz Truss. So when was the spark of realization that this is the easiest impression I could ever do?
What, like you say, what a sentence. Do you know what? She wasn't even on my radar, and I didn't even know who she was. I genuinely didn't know who she was, because I'd never heard of her, and a friend sent me a message and said, "Oh, why don't you do a parody of this woman? She's really funny." And when I watched her, I did get jealous, because I thought that she was a comedian and that she was parodying politicians. And I thought, well, she's got a similar casting bracket to me as well. She's blonde. We look a bit similar. She's already getting more views than I ever will. I can't do anything. And then I realized that she was real, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to do something. So it genuinely started as a joke in my garden, just doing some silly like parody of her campaign video, and didn't expect anything of it, because I've been up until that point just posting random characters on my YouTube channel, and nothing had really come of it, and nobody had really seen them. And then suddenly overnight I had all of these subscribers and views, which are absolutely amazing and so grateful for. But I was like, oh my God, I'm not an impressionist, and I'm not a satirist. I don't know what to do. So then I started researching her heavily and trying to find up as much as I could, and tried to practice their voice and I thought, oh, I'll do another one. And then I kept doing more and more, but I couldn't keep up, because she was just doing something all the time. It kind of just got out of control, lasted 49 days, and then it was gone as quick as it came.
This is the thing, as I think, I'm sure I heard one comedian say a few years ago that satire is dead because our leaders are parodying themselves. Like you say, you thought she was a comedian. How do you take what is comically bad and exaggerate it to make it funnier?
Well, like they were saying, it is really, really hard. And I actually, when she released her book, one of my videos, I just read the book out word for word, verbatim, because I was like, I don't need to do anything else. It's done. And there are times where I've got to let that pass because I don't know what to do with that. But I've got this like challenge in my mind all the time of there's a way that I lift this a tiny bit, or I do, just something, whether it's, like I just, like, what was the recent one? I was an interview that she had done, which I didn't see the full thing, but they would just say, she just looked like she was falling asleep in it. And she just, like, it seems like over the time, her energies have really changed. 1 minute she's really like excited pork market style, and then the next minute she was falling asleep. So I thought, how do I take that and make that more? So I was like, well, maybe I make it that she's stoned. So I just got met her smoking weed. And I just thought that I've sort of always challenged myself to find something that I can one up it, but it's getting increasingly hard. I was thinking that maybe they're parodying me at this point. That's my latest.
Parodying you, parodying them, parodying you,
Yeah.
parodying them.
Yeah. Love it.
I mean, you must be the only person in Britain who is grateful that she's clinging on to some sort of political career, really.
Yeah, I think so. And I just really want her to keep going long enough, at least that Edinburgh. She keeps it relevant for me. Pure selfish, but also it's funny because in the recent videos I've been putting up, actually, some of my subscribers and followers and things are just going, "Is it wrong that I actually miss Liz Truss?" That, like, people are saying that they don't want her back, but they really want her back because she's just, even though everyone else is like a playground, the politics and everything, and the general election is absolutely, nuts, I still think that on people's level of crazy, that it's not a patch. And yeah, people are missing her. So maybe it's time for her to come back so that I can do some more.
I think it's something like, this might be out of date, but something like combined views on YouTube and TikTok is over 7 million, I think.
Something like that. From
being in the back garden and having a bit of a laugh to 7 million views, that's extraordinary, isn't it? How do you react to something like that?
Yeah, it's incredible. I kind of can't believe it, really. And I'm just very, very grateful to anybody that watches my videos. I've still got that thing of, oh, but it's just me in the garden, or it's just me. Like, there's no budget behind it. It's just an iPhone, green screen. There's nothing crazy. My boyfriend will do the editing on the iPhone. Like, it's all very very basic. But I'm just amazed and very grateful that all of these people are following and watching it, and just hope that I can keep doing it, really. But it is overwhelming at the same time, because I have to stop myself sometimes with that pressure of something happens, whether it's in the news or whatever, and if you're busy and you're doing work and all of that, like, you're like, whoa, God, where do I find the time to put this video out? Where do I find the time to write something? But I think for as long as people are enjoying it, and that's the main thing, just anything that gives it a bit of lightness amongst the craziness of everything is the main thing, really. That's the aim.
Yeah. We've talked about your building up to your solo show. So this Edinburgh this year will be your debut as a solo artist with your show, The Exorcism of Liz Truss. Even in the title, you can't get rid of her so easily. So tell us about the show. Who's in it? What other familiar faces can we expect to see?
Yes, so The Exorcism of Liz Truss is very much what it says on the tin. I'm trying to find a way to escape her, because actually ever since I've done any other characters, people just still compare me to Liz Truss, or they can't see past it, they just see Liz all the time. So I thought I'd create this show to find a way of putting her to bed, because I've noticed that we've developed these codependencies, similarities between us, and that's concerning. I also, when she resigned, was looking her up all the time on Google to see what she's up to, just in case she's done something. So now she's faded from relevance. I, need to move on. But obviously, what do you do when people just think you're Liz Truss all the time? So I've got my various characters that are some political, some non-political, that are there on the journey to try and find ways of exercising her from within my body, as well as these stand-up stories that are going through that tell the stories of the things that perhaps I'm holding on to in my life, of why, because maybe I don't want to let her go, because she's a big part of what's helped me gain the success that I have. So yeah, it's a real mixture, and there's maybe a bit of Nadine and Boris in there. And I'm thinking, obviously, with the general election, that's the other thing. It's I'm like, oh, okay, now where's what do I need to put some more political elements in here? What we got some, anything could happen in the next 6 weeks. So I'm aware that the show may change. Yeah, exactly. It could be a whole different show by the time it gets to August.
Do you still watch comedy yourself as an entertainment?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I try and soak up as much as I can, whether I go and watch something live, or like, particularly if you're going and performing at a mixed bill night or something, I'll make sure that I stay and watch all of it, so that I like to watch other people and see what they're doing and be inspired by them, and also see how they do it, what their take is. But also just to switch off. Like, I know it's silly, but I've always loved Friends, and I love The Office, both the American and the English Office, and I still watch repeats of Big Train and Fast Show, like Alan Partridge, all the things that I loved growing up. I mean, as well as obviously loads of new things too. But I find so much comfort, especially at the end of the night when I'm trying to switch off, to just go, oh, this is why I do it, because I've grown up watching this thing, and this makes me happy. So actually, it just gives a little bit of relief, takes it all off. I love it. I love watching anything comedy.
Do you find that you still watch it in the same way, or do you now have like the comedian's mindset? So you'll see a performer or a sitcom, and instead of laughing, you'll sort of nod and smile and go, that's clever.
Yeah, I definitely do watch it in a different way now. I think I'm watching it and thinking, oh gosh, yeah, I never would have thought of that, or even like the camera angle of how something's happening. Like, I know what's going to happen next, or the structure of this, where it's going to go. But what I love about, particularly when there is a program that you do love so much, if I do start with that frame of mind, it's a testament to the program that after a while I completely forget that I was watching it with that, because I just go, no, it doesn't matter. I'm enjoying it. That's nice.
How much do you find that your show changes? I mean, you will have made changes. There's perspective changes depending on electoral results also. But how much do you find it changes from a draft idea, from concepts in the back of your head, as the year develops up to what's coming up in August?
Yeah, it massively changes. And even when you think that something hasn't changed, when you come to putting it all together again, even if you think, oh, it's only a few little bits, you're like, God, that actually has changed the whole vibe of the show. That's what I found anyway. And I started working on this show in August 2023. So yeah, last year, and I did it in Camden. And it's gone through so many different iterations that by the time I did it in Brighton recently, I was like, that it was a completely different show to what it was initially. And I think that even from this point to when I do it in July, will probably be a different show again. And then where it gets to, and I don't think that's even to do necessarily with the election. So I go, gosh, with that on top, if I do put any more of that in, then that will change it all even more. Which is really great, but it's overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. But what I like about it is that it forces me to challenge myself and just see and trust and play. Because it's so easy, I think, to get stuck in this is what something is, especially once from that acting perspective. If you've learned a script or something, it's harder sometimes to then unpick it or be directed in a different way once it's in your body. Whereas actually with the comedy show, it's like forcing yourself to go, okay, but it can't be that, because you've got to try this other thing, and you've got to throw this in here and mix it up. And when I do that, it's quite often that it will be a little key to unlocking like even a bigger framework or something. So I'm forcing myself to do that. But yeah, it's scary, especially when Edinburgh's coming up and you're like, oh my God, that's a massive thing. I need the show to be what it is by the time that happens.
And you talked about improv a little bit. How much do you build in, do you think? How much have you built into the show? How much do you build into a set to allow yourself to adapt and change to what's happening in the room necessarily?
I think that's another thing that I have learned, that I do really enjoy that element, and I need to allow more space for it. I don't think it's impossible to time things when you don't have an audience, and then when you suddenly get into the space, you're like, oh, that's really fun. I want to join in with that, but I need to crack on with this thing because I've got a lot of material to get through. So I'm learning now, I think, that, okay, that's the bit that I really do enjoy. So I'm going to have to allow a bit longer for that, whereas it may have only been like 5 or 10 minutes or something. It's like, okay, does that need to be more like 15 so that I've got the breath there for. So it's like finding, like you were saying earlier about, oh, is it character? Is it stand up? Or what is it that you like? I kind of go, oh, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this because it's a bit like Liz Truss would say, but if you think of it like a pie, how am I distributing the pie?
A cheese wheel, if you will.
Oh, no, yeah. Basically, you need a big pie. And then I can work out which section of the pie is which bit. I can't believe I've never even thought of it like that, and it's worrying that is what's come out of my mouth today. Oh God. You don't know what to say. I don't know what to say either.
I had a question, but now I don't know what that was.
You want some pie?
Do you have any targets in mind for your show or for yourself? Do you picture yourself playing particular venues, preparing on certain bills? Do you have expectations for what you want your show in August to achieve?
I think basically I'd like to just stretch my audience really as more, and be able to get more people to see me that might not have seen the stuff that I've done online, and grow my audience, and make it a little bit more of a profile, I think is the idea. And then from there just can start expanding on, like if it is that I want to do just some stand-up or something, that I can use this as like the launching pad of the things that I've been doing, and then start playing and doing other bits and pieces as well, and see where that leads. I mean, it'd be lovely to get some more work little bits and pieces on TV and things like that. That's been really, really fun. But equally at the same time, I kind of taking the pressure off of what that does or doesn't look like. I kind of think the main thing for me is just going up there and doing a show that I've wanted to do for so long, and I've put it off for whatever reason, whether it be the duo or trio, or and just go, actually, to even for anyone that's going up there to even just kind of go, you're doing this thing, and is massive, and just being really grateful to be there, really, because it's been a long time coming, and it's an amazing festival to be part of. So I think that's the main thing, is to just try and enjoy it, because it is such an amazing experience.
But this time it's not a duo, it's not a trio, it's not a cast, it's you and people you bring on stage within you. Is that daunting?
Yes and no. Weirdly, it is, in the sense of you just don't know how it's going, what it's going to be perceived like. You've got that thing of like, whatever you think that your show is, it never is that to someone else. it just never is. And I'm very much someone who will just keep working and trying to make something better. But it's sometimes difficult when you don't know you can do because you're trying to work that out or second guess something, as in the same way that an audience might be. So I think it's about just going up there and going, by the time it gets to August, going, this is what I've done, this is my take on this situation that I have created. And then by that point, it's just going, I'm going to do this with confidence and have fun and know that actually this is what I can offer you. This is who I am. These are the things I do. Yeah, if you enjoy it, that's great. And if you don't, that's also great. But just going, I'm just going to be me and be wacky old whatever, and that's my version of what I am. I think by that point you kind of put so much time and so much energy and money and everything into it that just go out there and just, I suppose in the same way you would any show, you go, this is my or a piece of, I don't know, even like Shakespeare, you go out and you go, this is my perception, this is my take on this bit of script, and then the audience are either going to love that or not, because they're coming to just be entertained, and that's that. So I think I'm actually sort of by that point, hopefully anyway, I'll just kind of go, this is me, I'll just enjoy it and not get too overwhelmed by it. Hopefully famous last words.
So if by the end of the second week you come on as the lion from The Wiz, we know where your mind has gone to.
That's a good idea.
Put that in your notes. There you go.
Thank you.
So given all of your experience so far, what have so far been your best and worst experiences in comedy, be that a gig or whatever?
Ooh, that's a good question. Best experiences in comedy, I actually think it was the moment that I did my first show in solo show in Camden last year, because like I was saying, that this has been such a long time coming, and I felt like I was that person that had been telling everyone that I'm doing this show, and I've been saying that for like 7 years. I'm going, I'm going to do a show, guys, I'm going to do a show, and then eventually I actually did it, and the feeling at the end of it, I was just like, I've done it. I'm really happy with myself, because I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I think it went well. People were really lovely, and it was a really nice audience, and it was just a really nice moment that I could kind of like capture in my head. And I'd say the same for the moment when we were on Britain's Got Talent, that first round, and the audience, they just seemed to, the reception, they loved it, and the judges and everyone was stood up, and it was this kind of like overwhelming magical moment that you kind of go, I don't think I'll ever get this feeling again, because I think there's something like 4,000 people in there or something. And we'd been so stressed about it and so worried, and all of that hard work kind of just went, okay, breathe. It was like just a real high and a real buzz. And then the worst moments, I'd probably say, was equally on the flip side of that, on Britain's Got Talent. The semi-finals, when we got told we were no longer in the competition, which we knew. But it was just, I don't think anyone could hear it at home, but obviously live in the live audience, Anton Decker revealing who goes home, and the lights go out on you if you're going home. And they just went, the dots are... And someone out in the audience just shouted out, going home, obviously. It was such a moment of, oh God, I'm live on TV. And then the lights just go out on your little face, just going, oh no. But actually, really, but like, I can look back and I laugh at that. But at the time, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to live this down. That's got to be up there with the worst moment for sure.
So how can we find out about you and where we come and see you perform?
You can find out about me via my website. It's probably the best thing, because it's got links to everything. So www.nerineskinner.co.uk, and that'll tell you all the next shows and links to my YouTube and all of the things, including Edinburgh. So that's probably the best place to head to. They can't see me, but I'm doing the Liz Truss smile.
I saw what you were doing. Yeah.
That's really disturbing. I'm really sorry.
Is that just automatic now? You just
Yeah,
can't.
do you know what? I didn't even realize I was doing Liz Truss. I was doing that as me, and then I realized that that's Liz's smile. That's what I mean. That's not okay.
You have become one now.
Yeah, that's so disturbing. Really sorry.
Well, before she takes over completely, perhaps you yourself could answer my last question,
Yes,
which is, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I would sum up comedy in a nutshell by saying that I think it's about having fun and being silly and taking people away from whatever it is that is going on in their lives. I really enjoy the idea of people being able to escape from whatever that is, whether that's their health condition or a stressful work situation, a relationship, that something that takes you out of yourself for a moment and gives you just a breath. You can, I can try meditation, I can try journaling, I can try things that when I get anxious and stressed, but actually there's nothing that quite does that for me anyway, as much as comedy does. And obviously that will be different for every person, but I think it has the power and ability to connect with people and relate to people in a way that sometimes even therapy and things can't. And I think that when people message on YouTube or whatever it is and they say, you've really helped me get through this really hard time, or this cancer treatment, or whatever it is, I just think that's why I do it. It doesn't matter about all the rest of it, or reviews or whatever. It's just okay, I've connected with you and I'm helping in some way, and if it's helped me in the past and I can help other people, then that's a really nice exchange of energy, I think.
Nerine, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.